Hey everyone, let's try this again. Here in Acton, California with Steffen, Parko. I'm going to just quickly tag the application for Parko in here so that as I'm talking, this is there. Let's pin that. How do I pin you? Pin comment. Okay, great. So, for those of you who are tuning in right now, I'm not sure how many of you guys know this sweet boy story. Parko just got his nuts. That's a better angle. He just got his nuts clipped, so he is actually still has a little bit of anesthesia going on. But I met Parko in El Salvador almost 2 years ago now. So I was speaking at a women's surf retreat, and I don't usually do one-off case stuff, but this sweet guy came up to me and locked eyes, and we have been on a journey together. So he had a couple of foster opportunities and people that were going to adopt him in El Salvador, and a lot of you have donated to his journey in the different ways. And yeah, so unfortunately both of his homes, sorry about the wind, both of his homes in El Salvador fell through, and then we were at a point where we needed to get him out of El Salvador, or else he was going to be back on the streets, which was while my visa was getting denied, which I don't know if you guys remember, but that was really stressful. You all really supported. We got him out of Acton, I think within I don't know, it was like 8 days something, or sorry, out of El Salvador in 8 days. And so yeah, so then he came to California, and then we needed to put him somewhere. And because he originally was owned, by the way, can you guys let me know how the sound is right now? Is this wind super crazy? Can you hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? But he was owned by somebody, and then he was abandoned. So he was someone's dog at one point. We think he's around 7 or 8 years old. He honestly could be 5. And cool, thanks for the thumbs up, guys. And so we're not really quite sure how old he is, but then he was on the streets for around 3 or 4 or 5 years. So he needed some decompression time. So then came Steffan. So Steffan Baldwin is amazing. He has been working with animals in a lot of different capacities for a long time. He worked out in Ohio with pit bulls, and one of the things that we connected on the first time that we met was that the animal cruelty officers in Ohio are making something ridiculous like $50 a month. $25 a month, even better. And so no one was really monitoring animal cruelty. So he went on a mission working with a lawyer and to try and change that, and has just been constantly dedicated to helping dogs, and specifically big breed dogs that had aggression. He first started working with pit bulls, right?
Yeah, I mean, we focus on dogs that are being abused. It just so happened that so many of the dogs that people abused wound up being pit bull type dogs. So, yeah, we weren't focused on pit bulls. We were focused more on abuse. It's just that that's the breed that people tend to abuse the most.
Got it. Cool. And then he moved out here. How many years ago to Acton?
It's been about 2 years now. 2 years in February.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I got connected with him through a follower who said, hey, there's this guy I know. He works with large breed dogs. He has a dog ranch. And oh yeah, that was a little barf burp. And so we got connected. Should we move to a different spot?
Nope, we're fine.
We're good? We're good, everybody. So, Parko's a street dog. This is a good segue. So what that means is he lived on the streets for a long time, and they have territories that they need to defend because no one's feeding them. And with a territory comes food and resources. So as you just saw, he is a...
We'll back up until he
Yeah, great. So this is a good, hi. Hey, sweet old boy. So this is a good segue. Parko, as you can see, is a behavior case, which means that when it comes to other dogs and socializing, he has special needs. As a street dog, he was not a pet. You know, he had to fight to survive, and they have different territories that they go in. I've been traveling since I was 18, so I've observed a lot of pack mentality and street dog stuff. So that means he's going to need somebody who understands that. He's probably not going to be like, he's not an off-leash dog, Park, and when it comes to socializing, is going to have some special needs around that, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more at the end, but just to finish our piece, me and Steffen got acquainted, and Parko needed a space to decompress. He also, when he came to LA 4 months ago, had heartworm, and so we were looking...
Get back down. Sorry.
Oh, what were you saying?
Just show quick that,
That
sure. Moment passes. And
Yeah.
It's just a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
We try and define dogs so quickly with that. It's just a brief moment in time. It's a brief reaction. It's so easy to work around. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all good. So he's good. We're good. Thanks for interrupting that for a second. So he went in and got connected with Steffen, and we got him to the vet, and he just finished his heartworm medication. He's all in the clear. He got neutered like 2 days ago, so now he's in the middle of like healing from that. And this is not, I should have brought a stationary thing. So Parko is now healthy as far as health pieces go. He's been working with Steffen, and maybe Steffen will just have you segue a little bit on the work you guys have been doing, and as he showed up with you versus where he is now, it'd be cool to tell people as well.
Sure. So, you know, a lot of the training that I do, I really say it's more therapy than training, because a lot of the aggression that we look at with dogs really is a fear-based response. So they're reacting to the way the environment is making them feel. And if we can get inside their head and we can change the way they feel, we can do a little bit of therapy, if you will, teach them new ways to respond and help them feel better emotionally, and then put them back into situations where we can have them grow from positive experiences rather than just suppressing the negative experience, which is what a lot of trainers do. They will just correct and suppress and correct and suppress and correct and suppress, which never really fixes the fear. And that really is the root of most aggression with dogs. So Parko in particular, you know, as we know, he came from the streets. When dogs live in the streets, you know, resources are scarce. Things that they value are not available in the same sense that they would be for a domesticated dog, where they have all the things they need and those resources are provided while their brains develop and while they grow. So when that doesn't happen, and we then take that dog and put that dog into a domesticated home and onto a leash and do all these things that are kind of foreign for them, that aren't normal for them, we really have to go slowly, and we really have to work hard on making things positive and making sure that they feel well before we ever even put them into the experience. So that's why we focus so much on decompression in the beginning. It's not so much about training Parko to be some robot of a dog. I don't believe in that. They're dogs. Dogs are beautiful just the way they are. We just need to give them some coping mechanisms and help them get past their fear. And the only way we can do that is, again, to guide them through life with positive experiences. So that's kind of what we're doing. You know, Parko's going to have some lifelong management issues, but as far as I'm concerned, they're low-level management issues. Parko's always going to have generalized resource guarding. That's what we just saw. Parko isn't dog aggressive. Parko can play with other dogs. Parko just needs time to learn that that dog is a good thing, is a positive thing. He needs a slow introduction. And out in the real world, he's going to want to resource guard the things that are most valuable to him. And what's most valuable to him are the two of us.
So resource is not just food, which
right.
I thought it was.
And many people think resource guarding is just bones and toys and food. Resource guarding people. Resource guarding favorite sleeping spaces, like your lap. I don't know how many of my clients have said, you know, I had one dog, everything was fine. I brought another dog in, everything was fine. And all of a sudden we were just Netflix and chilling, and dog A jumped on my lap when dog B was already there, and then a fight erupted. And it wasn't, neither dog is aggressive, neither dog is bad. It's a simple issue of resource guarding, and that's such a simple thing for animals because they can't rationalize the way we can rationalize. So if we can just try to be a little bit more understanding with some of these special needs dogs and realize that some of them, as they developed, they either missed certain things or they were taught certain things that are shaping their responses now. A lot of these dogs are a lot more adoptable than people think. They get so nervous by a little bit of growling or, you know, something that looks aggressive. But if we can get into the dog's head and understand what they went through and why they're responding that way, we can be a lot more understanding, because honestly, we all do the same thing. I mean, I'm guilty of reacting in the past. I'm guilty of not feeling well emotionally and making bad choices. So if I do it and I can rationalize, who are we to judge dogs when they do it and they can't even rationalize? I just think we should be more understanding with dogs, that's all.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and so as far as like where he's at now,
Yes.
what have you seen as far as like the last 4 months?
So Parko just needs time to build relationships and build trust. A lot of this really is relationship built. On the streets, dogs that he was social with, dogs that he was in a pack-like environment with, if you will, if you want to use that word, they all had a relationship, so they could interact. Dogs that were foreign and new, well, they were automatically seen as things that could take away resources from them. And again, that was such an important part of his life growing up. It's not an important part of his life anymore, but it's ingrained into him. So all we really need to do is, if we have another dog in the house, we just need to create a safe environment where we can basically do what we call crating and rotating. We put the dogs, we put baby gates up, we have different spaces for the dogs to interact in, and we give them all the wonderful things they need to have, which means as a foster, it's gonna take you a little bit longer to go through your day the right way. You're gonna get up a little bit earlier, and you're gonna go to bed a little bit later, because you're gonna have to spend time with the dogs individually, and then let the dogs coexist together with some separation and with some boundaries and with some control and with some space. It's not about corrections, it's not about being the alpha or any of that nonsense. It's just about giving them time to safely build a relationship. If we can do that, then Parko can build bonds with dogs individually. Out on the street though, we're always going to have to bring high value rewards with us, and we're going to have to bring tools where we can redirect him back to us, get his attention, get his focus, reward him for that. And then the hope is slowly over time, we can start to condition a different response. But again, we have 7 to 8 years of history to work back from. So it's going to be a timely process. You can't just send a dog to a trainer like you send your car to a mechanic and say, okay, it's been a little while, that thing should be fixed now. This is a living, breathing animal. He has feelings, he has thoughts. It's so much more complicated than a dog. So it's gonna be a long-term process, but it's really not difficult. His reaction is really low on the scale of reactions. He's easy to redirect. He's so food motivated, so it's so easy to bring food with you and redirect him, maybe cross the street, just go the other way, do something. There's so many simple ways to just kind of redirect him and keep him under threshold is the term. We want to keep him below that level of reactivity where he can just experience things, not react and move on. One of the best exercises going into a real home would be to go to a dog park where you stay outside the dog park, you don't go inside, but you use the dogs inside as kind of like your tests. You just kind of walk back and forth at that distance where Parko is non-reactive. We call that his bubble. So Parko's bubble is about maybe 20 feet or so. If a dog is 20 feet away, I can, with great success, put a treat in front of his face, get him to focus back on me. He knows that thing is still over there, that trigger, that dog, that whatever, but he's focused on me, he's getting rewards. The reason why that's important as a distraction tool is that we're also changing his brain chemistry. And that's the importance of treat training. That's where treat trainers and people who don't understand treat training, they criticize treat training unfairly. If a dog has a fear-based response and he's reacting, that means cortisol is pumping through his brain. That's a stress-based hormone. If a dog is stressed and they're reacting and we want to counter that by correcting them or shocking them or telling them no or squirting them with a spray bottle or all this other kind of stuff that we see trainers doing, we're suppressing the response because they fear us, but we're never changing the way they feel about the trigger. We're never changing the fear. We're never affecting the cortisol in a positive way.
It's like medicating rather than looking at the belief system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Maybe, or the belief in a human.
100%. And there's so many parallels we can make between human behavior and dog behavior. But if we can recognize that it's a fear-based response, even if it looks scary, and we can change that fear-based response with food, well, we know that food produces dopamines, endorphins. It produces those feel-good chemicals and hormones that impact the cortisol. You cannot be stressed and happy at the same time. You just can't. So that's why treat training is so important, so valuable. We're not just tricking him to not respond. We're changing the way he feels about the trigger. But it is going to be a long-term process with him.
Got it. Cool. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Hi. Hello. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, sure.
And so, also, just in full transparency, because that's the name of my game and should be all of our games. So when Parko was with his foster mamas, there was a couple of instances that were around resources. One of the times was with food. Yeah, you want to sure. And with another dog, where he bit her. So it was a bite and release, and then there was another thing that was again around territory and resources. So because of that, while I've been working on this project with Parko and this cause, which you guys have been loyally and beautifully following and supporting, it felt really important to me that he had this step with Steffen, because putting him directly into a home didn't really feel safe. And within that, full transparency is he needs somebody who is going to be calm, grounded, aware of his past and his needs, and willing to really understand them and work with him. And as Steffan's saying, it's manageable. It's manageable when you have the tools and the knowledge. And the other part of Parko being here for 4 months too is that Steffen is going to be working. You're available for integration training as well as
free charge. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it
Totally.
lifetime stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So for a lifetime. So if you adopt Parko, you are going to have a lifetime of training. So not just during his integration, but also for his life. And the other piece is that with Steffen, and he has a training organization and then also Underdog Alliance, is that if for whatever reason it wasn't a fit, you can bring him back to the dog ranch, and he will always have a space with Steffen for us to find another home. So it's not a forever thing. If it doesn't work for you, kind of like a foster to adopt situation is more so of try it out, be supported in that, and then if it doesn't support both you and Parko, then it's not the right choice. So
And that's okay.
yeah, and that's totally okay. So yeah, this is Parko. We don't know how old he is. He's 5 to 8.
We don't know what he is.
We don't know what he is. He's a sweet mutt. He came from the streets of El Salvador. Yeah. And my work has been guiding him, hopefully, to his home. So I think at this point, I'm going to actually tilt my screen the other way so I can read your questions. Hold that one second.
Sure.
I'd love to. Is there anything else we should note on what would be, before we get into questions, what would the most ideal home look like for Parko at this point?
So 2 things in terms of the ideal home. There would be the ideal person, and then there would be the ideal environment. One thing that you touched on was the bite history. So there's lots of training styles, but there's 2 main training styles. One is to redirect a dog and to motivate them to do what you want and then reward that response. The other is to kind of force the dog and control the dog and dominate the dog through coercion and correction to get the dog to do what you want. And quite frankly, if you use the other method, Parko's gonna bite you, and I don't blame him. So he needs to be in a home where people understand dog behavior, and they understand that the best way for dogs and children, so it works for humans too, to learn is to be redirected, to be guided. He still needs leadership. It's not that we're not a leader. It's not that we don't provide guidance. It's not that we don't provide rules and structure and boundaries. We provide all of those things. But when we want him to do something, we want him to go somewhere, we want him to go in of a crate, out of a crate, whatever we want from him, if we can guide him with something that he values, pair that with a command, and then praise him afterwards for the response, he's going to do whatever we want him to do. There's no issue there. If you try and force him, well, you know, good luck with that. So, so that's what he needs from a person. He's someone who understands dog psychology and dog behavior and doesn't try and take this outdated dominance alpha style training, because that really is not rooted in science at all. In terms of the environment, you know, we're out here in Acton. He loves the open air. He will sit out in the yard sometimes for hours. So he really does love open spaces, but it doesn't mean if you live in an apartment that you can't provide that for him. You can take him to open spaces and spend hours outside with him. So the right home is really a place where someone is going to make sure that his physical needs, his mental needs, and his emotional needs are all met on a regular basis. And when his physical needs, mental needs, and emotional needs are met, he's going to be a happy dog. So he enjoys outdoor spaces. He enjoys walking around and lounging. He really loves using his nose. So we can get him to walk well, loosely on a leash in town, but he loves to go out in the country on a longer leash and just, you know, smell the roses and get that mental stimulation. He likes he's been outdoors for a long time, so he does enjoy that. But again, that doesn't mean that you can't adopt him if you don't have a huge yard or live out in the middle of nowhere like me. You just have to be committed enough to give him those things and those outlets on a regular basis.
Cool. And then as far as other pets, like as far as that, like people that have, I know Jenny, I saw that you're on here, who has a bird, which we talked about, or cats, or dogs.
Right, sure.
Kind of what's the most ideal slash, you know, obviously you can probably work with and try integration with a lot of things, but what's your, like, what would be his, like, fuck yes home?
Sure. So the ideal thing would be someone who realizes that since he lived for about at least minimum 5 years on the streets where resources were scarce, he's always going to have resource guarding issues when it comes to food, when it comes to bones, when it comes to higher value items. That's always going to be an issue. So if we have another dog or other animals in the home, we have to follow kind of basic multi-dog management protocol if you have multiple dogs, especially if you're in the rescue community. One of the favorite go-to resources I have for people that want to adopt a dog with resource guarding issues is called How Many Dogs. HowManyDogs.com is the website. My friend is the author, and there's a lot of management tips where you have baby gates put up in hallways, you have crates and ways where you can rotate dogs in and out. So the ideal home with other animals is a home where it's set up with the flow where he can have the time to get settled into his new environment, and he can have the time to get to know all the other animals in the home, and in the meantime all of the resources can be kept up and away. That doesn't mean they don't get bones and toys and treats. They get all of those things. They just get them in their safe place, which for Parko is his crate slash kennel. That's his safe place. So that's where all the good stuff happens. He gets bones every day. He gets Kong stuffed with peanut butter. He gets all the good stuff. He just gets them in a place where he doesn't have to worry about anything else coming up and taking it away from him. And again, as aggressive as it sounds, it's a fear-based response. They fear that the resource will be taken away. So someone who understands that you can't fix that, and it's going to be more about building the relationship over time with the other animals, that's the ideal home.
Okay, cool. And this guy likes no shortage of love. He's been, since day one when he was super sick and slimy and pussy and smelly, he has been snuggled into my legs like right now. So loves people, loves love, is very, very affectionate with humans. Also, there was some small kids at one of the foster moms was dating a guy, and I saw Parko interact with one of these kids that was like 4 with like chicken. Like a kid was feeding him chicken.
Oh, really?
He was fine.
Yeah, he was good with my son too.
Yeah.
My son's 12. So.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as kids go, he's been around kids, and yeah. So that's kind of a little walk to the journey. I'd love to just scroll up and see if there's any questions around adopting him. I know location-wise, we're willing to, if you know, someone was saying, "Oh, I'm in Canada," we're willing to look at that. Like ideally, it would be somebody in California who's closer. But if there was the right person, like Parko can travel. He traveled from El Salvador already. And let me just go up here. So I've also pinned the application form in this live. So if you look down, that's what that is. And our intention with this live is to connect Parko with his next home. We've had 2 different people that we're going to adopt Parko that were local, and both fell through for different reasons. got service trucks. And hi, baby. Hi. Hi. What's that? What's that? Hey, good boy. I love how he sits. He sits like a little dinosaur-y.
Parko, come.
Amazing. So cool. Are you balls feeling better, Parko?
Well, the other thing too is, so he was just neutered, so he is coming out of anesthesia. So sometimes, like with that response we saw earlier,
Yeah.
that definitely could be amplified just because he's coming out of anesthesia. When dogs feel weird, they act differently, just like us.
Yeah.
We don't feel well, we don't act well.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing
Yes.
with dogs.
So yes, everybody, he is doing well. However, with Steffen is more of a temporary thing. Steffen has over 50 dogs, at his dog ranch. And a lot of dogs that he deals with too are behavior cases that can't actually be, some of them can't be rehomed. So he creates like a sanctuary space for dogs to not be put down and to have a place. So although Parko loves Steffen, which of course he does, hi Courtney. Courtney was one of the girls actually on the retreat when we first met Parko, so she knows him. Yeah. So although he's doing really well, we are wanting to find him into the right home. So that is why we are here. Does anybody have any questions? I see this, some people don't follow leash laws. It's okay. Leash laws, yeah, leashes can be totally important. I don't think there's any questions from anybody. I think Jenny requested to be. Jenny, do you have any questions? It's hard to hear me. Uh-oh. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. I've had some stuff with my phone recently. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we jump off? Does anyone have anything at all? Let me know. You can also send me a message or a DM and we can discuss. But yeah, Parko is a sweet man with some special needs, and I'm so grateful also that Steffen is going to be available for support with getting him into a house and training, and you will not be alone in that experience, which is such a blessing and a gift. And also to everybody who's donated to his Kickstarter and supported so far. Flying him just into El Salvador was from El Salvador was $3,000, let alone he had a bunch of medical bills in El Salvador and here. So just huge thank you and gratitude to everyone who's already been involved. And looking forward to walking Parko home to whatever his home is and trusting the process that the exact person he is meant to give love to and be loved by will show up. Do you have anything else to add?
Nope, just, if anybody does have questions about his particular behavior, please reach out. We'll talk about it. It's very understandable. It's very low on the scale of aggression, and if you look at his history, it makes sense. And the more we realize that we don't necessarily have to fix dogs like Parko because there isn't anything necessarily broken with him in the first place. He's just special. He needs to be kind of understood a little bit better. The more adoptable he becomes. When we get obsessed with having these robot-like dogs who always behave exactly the way we want them to in exactly every situation, every dog can seem like a difficult dog to adopt. But the more we can get on track with understanding dogs like this, the way we would want understanding ourselves if we went through difficult things during formative years, he's very, very easy to manage, in my opinion. He's one of the most adoptable dogs we have on the ranch, and that's why we really want to get him out. We have requests all over. I had to deny 5 requests from Houston this week because there isn't space, and these are dogs that actually really need a sanctuary environment, dogs that really aren't safe to go out into the real world. Managed the right way, Parko is incredibly safe. So we want to get him out, not just for his sake, but for the dogs that really do need his spot on the ranch.
Yes, that's important to note. He is like the lowest
Yeah.
lowest grade dog Steffen usually works with, but really gratefully stepped up to be a part of Parko's process. So thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for everybody who's been following along and asking about his journey constantly. I appreciate your dedication, curiosity, and loyalty to him also finding his home. The application is in here. I'm gonna do a whole post of this. Would love it if you guys could share with people that you know if someone's wanting a dog and you think from this video they could be a good fit for Parko. I think that it would be great if we could all divinely manifest that together. So this is sweet little Parko. Hi. And yeah, thank you for tuning in with us. And do you have the burps? Do you have the burps? Yeah, thanks for tuning in from Acton, California, and having this great, honest conversation around what he needs. We're still holding space that exactly who Parko needs, oh hi baby, is going to show up. And yeah, it's always unraveling exactly as it should be.
Right.
Bye guys. Bye. Thanks for being here.